Cause he gonna swing on me. I ain't did nothing to that man, bro.
Even the most seasoned partygoers were stunned by what transpired last night, despite the fact that drama is nothing new to Atlanta nightlife. One of those nights when the most upscale nightclub in the city felt electrifying, with loud music, flashing lights, and a crowded room full of influencers, celebrities, and everyone in between. 3 familiar faces had unresolved business, and things were about to get ugly, even though the majority had come to dance and relax. Kirk, Frost, and young Jock weren't their typical boisterous, gregarious selves, but the VIP area was bustling. They were positioned in their corner booth, looking out over their court like kings, and they were dressed to impress. However, there was something strange about them. They weren't laughing or sipping informally like the others. Though neither of them was actually drinking, they did have drinks in their hands. They continued to scan the crowd instead. With his eyes fixed on the middle of the dance floor, Kirk barely nodded when Jock leaned in to speak to him. Although their body language conveyed a different message, they appeared calm and cool to the typical clubgoer. Although people were gathering around them, Kirk and Jock weren't there to have a good time. They were not wasting any time, and their VIP booth provided them with the ideal view of the space. They seemed to be waiting for someone to arrive, and then he did. Then he was, Lil Scrappy, not realizing that trouble was headed his way. When he walked in, Scrappy exuded confidence, a big smile, and a familiar swag in his walk, all of which made the room feel like it belonged to him. His people were all around him, and he was obviously in his element as he hugged people he knew and dapped fans. Scrappy was bursting with energy, clinking glasses, laughing aloud, and taking selfies with other partygoers. As more people gravitated toward him, you could sense the change in the club's atmosphere. While most people were drawn to the fun, a few astute observers noticed something else. That's just the way it always is when Scrappy goes out. Kirk was still locked in with Jock across the room in that dark VIP booth. They were paying close attention to every move Scrappy made, so their looks weren't casual. Although not everyone could see it, those who did could sense the tension in the air. A dancer by the bar stopped in the middle of twerking and glanced over at Scrappy's booth. A few security officers discreetly moved, and even the DJ, in the middle of a change, slowed down a little bit, as though he was attempting to gauge the direction of the crowd. However, every spotlight created a shadow, and Scrappy was going to walk straight into one. Even more silence fell when they returned to the VIP booth. Once more, Kirk leaned in and spoke more softly. No longer feeling playful, Jock nodded, looked at his phone, then raised his head and looked around the club. With his chin, Jock indicated Scrappy's section. Eyes narrowing, Kirk followed the movement. Instead of sipping or grinning, they were merely observing. When she arrived at their booth, a waitress who had brought more drinks stopped. She stopped when she saw the expressions on their faces. She cautiously put the bottle down, avoided talking, and moved away. She too sensed the tension. Even though the cameras weren't out yet, the people in the room knew something was wrong. Kirk and Jock appeared to be waiting for something, as a few people seated close to his booth observed. While Scrappy continued to laugh, one of his friends leaned in and said something in a whisper. Scrappy paused to allow the moment to linger, looking over his shoulder directly toward Kirk and Jock's booth. They were waiting, and the wait was finally over, rather than merely observing. Before long, the silence was broken. When Kirk and young Jock eventually left their VIP area, they began navigating the throng. People stepped aside as the two pushed through, and the atmosphere around them instantly changed. Even though there wasn't any shouting or loud noises yet, their movements caught everyone's attention. Still moving with his people, Scrappy was close to the middle of the dance floor when he saw the movement headed directly toward him. As Kirk and Jock approached, he turned and nodded as if to maintain composure. "What's up?" he asked, casually opening his arms. "Scrappy?" he asked. His tone was still inquisitive and perhaps even a little wary, not tense. However, neither Kirk nor Jock smiled in return from the gesture. Instead, they were so close that they didn't even consider personal space. The music abruptly seemed too loud for the tension in the room, but the tone quickly changed, and what had begun as words swiftly turned into something much more dramatic. Jock leaned in first. His words were clear, even though his voice was still low. "Scrap? What you said was heard," he said, staring him in the eye. "You've been talking too much." Scrappy furrowed his brow in confusion. "Discussing what?" "You know exactly what playing both sides is, grinning in our faces while running your mouth behind the scenes." Kirk didn't wait for a response before firing back. The real weight fell at that point. "Do you believe that this won't be brought back to us?" Kirk took out his phone and held it up as a badge of proof. The receipts were obtained. Once more, Jock leapt in. "You were talking crazily at that studio last week. Do you believe that people are faithful to you? We received everything from them." Scrappy glanced at the phone before turning back to Kirk. The conversation doesn't even end there. Every one of you takes things out of context. I said what I said, but it wasn't how you're trying to twist it, he said, raising his voice slightly. But Kirk remained unflinching. He stated, context or not, you said it, period. With the alleged proof in hand, the anger was now personal as well as verbal. The moment was growing more intense by the moment. Scrappy had lost his usual composure and his face was now flushed. He yelled, "Y'all are acting like I'm some snake, but I have been real with both of y'all more times than I can count." Scrappy snapped, "You believe that I'm afraid of invoices? Regardless, half of you are fake. There are no longer any loyal people here. Everything was altered by the volume." People who had not previously noticed were now coming out to watch phones. In order to be prepared, security at the edge of the dance floor began to move in as the DJ turned down the music a little. Pointing to Kirk's phone, Scrappy said, "You want to show people that show the rest too. Show how when I wasn't around, you all were talking slickly about me." This statement was powerful. Kirk resisted Jock's advance, telling him to talk, let him get it all out. Scrappy was not calming down though, saying, "I held you all down and now you're ready to burn it all because of a few words out of context." They were now surrounded by a tight but not overly close crowd. Everyone in the club seemed to understand that the test of pride, respect, and trust was taking place there under the flashing lights rather than about who said what. You could sense it in the air. It was only a matter of seconds until the last spark ignited everything. As the yelling reached its climax, neither Scrappy nor Jock were giving up. The small gap between them was filled by Scrappy's advance, bringing them chest to chest. While Jock remained motionless, Kirk noticed and positioned himself shoulder to shoulder with Jock. Leaning in, he warned Scrappy one last time, "You might want to fall back before this gets real." But that was past Scrappy. After a moment, he said, "It already is real." Just enough to get a reaction, Jock pushed forward, and that was it. Jock stumbled back a little after Scrappy gave him a hard shove in the chest, running into someone nearby. Chaos broke out before the music had a chance to stop. A glass shattered and a drink flew from a table. Everyone around them suddenly moved in as Kirk lunged forward. Scrappy was pushed further after one of his boys jumped in to pull him back. Another VIP guest was bumped into by a second member of Scrappy's crew, who slipped while attempting to intervene. Once silently watching, the crowd was now caught up in a real fight as drinks spilled and chairs toppled. The dance floor became a flurry of shouting, pushing, and flashing lights. As people screamed, some began recording and even held their phones high. Screams broke through the bass, phones were raised, and the nightclub wasn't merely observing, they were taking in a full-fledged brawl. Security wasted no time. Bouncers, all in black, hurried in from all sides in a matter of seconds, moving purposefully. One pulled Kirk out of the circle by grabbing him from behind, and another intervened between Scrappy and Jock before any punches could be exchanged. But Scrappy's group wasn't slowing down. One of his men pushed the security guard away while yelling, "Don't touch him like that." A woman in the vicinity screamed as a drink splashed on her dress. Tables were rearranged, and the booth where Scrappy had been celebrating now appeared as though a storm had passed through, as the bouncers doubled down and used brute force to force the group apart. As the situation subsided, club employees began moving in behind security to assist in repulsion of the crowd. When the DJ noticed the change, he turned off the music entirely, while attempting to keep other guests from getting caught in the middle while picking up broken glasses. There was only shouting coming from the front of the club. 3 security officers surrounded the side entrance where Kirk and Jock were led out. Just furious eyes and clenched fists, no words. One man was holding Scrappy by the arm as the rest of his crew was dragged toward the other end of the club, whispering, "Let it go, not here." Clubgoers outside, who had just seen the action, began sharing videos of it right away, shouting, "Yo, that's Scrappy and Jock fighting," with voiceovers. In just a few minutes, a 15-minute second video that someone uploaded received thousands of views. Another commented, "I've never witnessed such a dramatic outburst at a club." Individuals were taking sides, not merely responding. According to some, Kirk and Jock were overdoing it. At some point, the finger at Scrappy. In any case, everything was visible. Despite the brief altercation, the consequences will last for much longer. In Atlanta, Kirk and Jock have business relationships. Scrappy has club deals, public appearances, and collaborations planned. Real repercussions, lost endorsements, strained relationships, and possibly even legal issues if someone files charges are all possible with something this public. What are your thoughts on this entire situation then? For more, remember to subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments section.